Hi, let's talk about arrays. We already discussed a data type called object, which allows us storing key value pairs of information. Although very often we get a need to store sequential data. For example, we may need to store a list of something, maybe a list of to-dos in our organizer, or even a list of objects that represent users. For such cases, using object is not always convenient, and we need another data structure. The one we're going to look at is called arrays. Let's see how we can declare an array. There are actually two ways to declare an empty one. I'm going to say let r equal new array. This is one way, by calling an array constructor function. And another way, which is more widely used and simpler, is just using square brackets like this. So these are the two ways to declare an empty list or an empty array. We will put values in it later, and I'll show you how in just a minute. Another syntax to declare an array is usually more common, is declaring an array with some elements already in it. We can also declare it like so. Let array2, and I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3. Here, elements can be anything. Any data type is acceptable, a number, a boolean, string, you can put anything in it. So let me wipe this and let me declare another one to see a few more examples. I'm gonna call this one cars, and I'll declare an array with car makes in it. I'm gonna say BMW, Kia, and maybe Toyota. We can refer to elements in an array by its index. Index numeration in arrays in all programming languages normally starts with 0, and JavaScript is no exception. So let me show you. I'm gonna throw a console log statement. I'm gonna say cars at the index of 0, and that will output BMW. So again, numeration starts with 0. BMW will be at the 0 index, Kia will be at the index 1, Toyota index 2. Let's just see this in action. I'm gonna output index 0 and 2, refresh, BMW and Toyota as expected. The total number of elements in an array can be accessed through its length property. So console log cars dot length will output the size of this array. Refresh. We have 3 elements in it, and this property will return a number, an integer number. We can also output an entire array if we pass it to console log. So let's see, log cars, and refresh. In browser console, we will see all elements in this array, and we can expand this to see more details. There you go. Now let's actually look into ways how we can add and delete elements from arrays. Queue is one of the most widespread array applications in JavaScript. In computer science, queue represents a data structure which can be modified by adding elements in the back and removing them in the front. It's like a real queue in real life. First element added would be first to get out. An application of such data structure can be maybe an email queue when we need to process a list of emails on the server, or it can be a queue of chat messages to display in the chat window. Literally anything. There are a lot of applications to it. I'm not gonna get into the computer science details. Let's just go ahead with it. Let's look at the practical example. Arrays have a push method. The push method will add an element to the end of an array, like so. Let me show you. I'm gonna say cars dot push, and maybe I'll push Audi. Again, log cars. Let's see what's in it. For the second time, Audi is added in the array. Same way, there is a method that removes an element. It is called shift. It deletes a first element from an array and returns it. So let's see this. I'm gonna say let first will be equal cars shift. And I'm gonna log first, and again an entire list of cars. There we go, BMW, the first element, and our updated list of cars. A couple other helpful methods as follows: unshift. This method will add an element to the beginning of an array. So if I were to add BMW again, there we go. And pop. Pop will delete the last element of an array and return it. So I could say let last equal cars pop and log last element. And Audi is the last element, just to be sure we can output cars again to make sure that Audi is not in it. There we go. There is something important that I gotta tell you about these methods to keep in mind. Push and pop methods usually have faster execution time than shift and unshift. Working with the tail of an array is usually much faster than with the beginning. The explanation to this is actually pretty straightforward. If you're adding or deleting an element in the beginning, JavaScript will have to move all elements of an array by one position. Whereas if element is added or deleted in the end, the rest of an array remains intact. Let's talk about iteration here. We used it in our previous video, and I just wanted to go over this once again. With a regular for loop, we're able to iterate over all elements of an array. And let's see how this works. I could say for let I equal 0, I is less than cars.length, I plus plus, alert cars at the index of I. Refresh. BMW, Kia, Toyota. Perfect. In the loop, we could perform whatever logic, not just alerting an element. Another way to iterate over all elements is the for off loop. Same concept, just syntax looks a bit different. Let's see. I'm gonna get rid of this, and I'll say let car off cars. Refresh. Actually, I have to get rid of this. Alerting car, not cars and the index of I, because I does not exist anymore. Refresh. BMW, Kia, Toyota. Perfect. Arrays, again, may contain any kind of data types, literally anything: strings, numbers, objects, even other arrays. Also, it's important to remember that same way as objects are passed by reference, arrays are passed by reference too. Remember the difference of passing by value versus passing by reference. If I were to say let maybe new cars equal cars, at this point new cars contains not a copy of the cars, but rather this same array. And if I were to modify something at new cars, maybe the first element. By the way, this is how you could replace an element in an array by just referring to it at its index. You can say new cars at the index of 0, maybe equal to Lada, ugly Russian car, and output cars and new cars. Refresh. There's our alerts, and see how these two outputs are the same. This is because these two variables are now referring to the same array in memory, because arrays again are passed by reference, not by value. That's all I've got for this video. As usually, helpful links will be in video description. Enjoy.